Welcome to the Hole in the Head podcast. This week we're wrapping up some BMW projects and making swap meet plans. We also need to address some very poetic and multicultural elephants in the room. But first, snacks. Here's Andy and Blaine.
Andy, it's time for Hole in the Head ideas and chats and artistic expressions, evidently.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Elephant in the room. Well, so what are you up to? You were eating banana bread?
My wife made banana cake, and it is reminiscent. Here's the highest praise you can ever give for banana cake. It tastes almost as good as Sara Lee frozen banana cake. Have you ever had for Sara Lee frozen banana cake?
I have not had Sara Lee frozen banana cake.
Well, if you go buy it, it's been the same for 60 years. It's a little brick of very dense banana cake. It's very good, but the frosting is on top of it like it's a raft of frosting, and if you're careful, you can peel the whole piece of frosting off in one thick sheet, and then you can eat the cake and then just eat the frosting, and it's kind of the best thing ever. And so my wife makes a very credible imitation, and I've given her this high praise, and then of course I had to qualify it when I said it's almost as good as the Sara Lee frozen cake. But
I find that those compliments don't land as we intend them to do. I like in my head and in your head, that was like, I'm laying this down, this comment, this positivity. This is so amazing that it's right up there with my like childhood favorite. Like that's huge.
Oh,
but
yeah,
what she heard, did she hear that, or did she hear,
well, like,
it's not quite as good?
No, she knows it. She knows it's true, but it's also a chance for her to pounce on me. That's what it really is. Because the other the highest praise you can give, if your wife ever makes a casserole or whatever, and you say this is as good as a Swanson's Hungry Man dinner, which which again, like you said, is high praise, because from my youth that was the high point of eating. Was getting to have a frozen pot pie. Or a Swanson's Hungry Man dinner where you peeled a little foil off to expose the apple cobbler cake thing that would crisp up, and then you could have your
burn the shit out of your mouth.
It's a tongue burner, but you could have your Salisbury steak and corn and apple dessert dinner, all in nicely separated in little compartments. I mean, the TV dinner was a wonderful thing, man.
Yeah, well, we can go on a whole rabbit hole of like I know what happened to that. It was never good for you. Those things are like empirically not good for you in terms of nutrition, but they were good and they kept us alive.
I'm 60 years old and I ate a semi-load of them. Okay, at least.
Yeah.
All right.
Same.
And so I don't know how much of my life is it going to take away. I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, who's to know, right? But we have a back and forth today. My daughter had a gumball or a jawbreaker, one of those jawbreakers. Of course, it lasts forever and changes colors. And so my wife thought that she was eating different kinds of candy, like she was continuously eating candy because the candy that was in her mouth was changing colors. And so she's like,
"That's fun to see that.
You need to stop eating candy. That's sugar. You can't eat candy." And so it was like this. Calm down. But then I realized, like, man, we are in a different time. Like, whatever. It's like, huh. I had cheesecake and cookies and cream ice cream, like meal replacements for, days. Anyway, well, on that note, I just finished a cookie in the spirit of homemade desserts, and I went crazy. I made chocolate chip walnut, and I put some dried cherries in there. Cookies.
Now this sounds fantastic, and you are actually quite known for being a little bit of a baker's man, because I've seen you delight your office mates. And when we worked together, it was a big treat every time you brought cookies in. But don't make the mistake of putting nuts in it again. That's something wrong.
Listen, no way, man.
No, that's not right. And we won't go. We'll do this on our Food Network show. But just trust me, if you leave the nuts out, nobody's ever going to bitch and go, "I wish it had nuts." So just leave them out.
I do find that I'm the only one who likes the walnuts, and so that that just makes me want to cook them that way more, because then I get more cooking. Well,
yeah. Tell me about your motorcycles or your machines that you're messing with, Andy.
There's always something. Right now, I'm working on the BMWs because they're just big and in the way. And I actually made some progress with both, some more than others, but the R100 runs, rides, it needs, like tune-up work. I got to change the oil and probably do the rear and pull that out and lubricate the splines and all. But that and the R65 are just right in the middle of the garage. Every time I go out there, I can't do anything until I get those moved forward. I'd like to sell that R65, but I was having such a hard time with it. It wouldn't consistently idle. And then when I could get it to idle, then I would bog down. It just rode really, really rough. And I could not figure out what was going on. And finally, like the guy before me rebuilt the carbs. I have the carb kit that he used, or the whatever's left over. And so I kind of trusted that. Looked at the carbs initially. I kind of poked at it. And everything seemed to be in order. Well, I was underneath it the other day, messing with the mixture screw and ordering some parts. And I realized that I've never seen the mixture screw spring that's in that mixture screw on the bottom of the carb.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it doesn't have one. And so, well, what else is it missing? So the left side carburetor doesn't have a mixture screw spring. It's missing the O-ring. So there's like, okay. So I just ordered a couple rebuild kits. There's 32 millimeter Bings. I'm just going to rebuild them and start over.
Yes. I just want to add that 90% of carburetor problems are ignition. So,
yep.
Take the front cover off and watch it run at night and see if the points are arcing everywhere.
I did the ignition of the static, and then I did the advance, and my timing light, like I don't know if I'm doing it wrong. I've gone through 2 timing lights, cannot get the damn thing to work. Like I've tried external 12-volt sources. I have one from Harbor Freight, cheapy one, then I have another one that's like the weird one that's got a handle and it leans forward, and I cannot work a timing light. And so I don't know if I'm breaking them, am I dropping them? You know what I mean? Like
they're fairly inconsistent. Because I've had the same problem. I mean, I have 2, and I'm always going between one and the other to see whichever one gives me a light. So there's something about being troublesome. But anyway, I have a R65 too, and I just put it up for sale. By the way, it's going to bring a trailer. So I just took my pictures and did that. So we're kind of crossed the threshold on that, and it's so I'm so embarrassed to say this. When you just tune it up like it says to do it in the book, it's just delightful. And usually I take all kinds of shortcuts, and I always want to go somewhere in a hurry. And I think I don't need to set the timing. I'll just twist, I can do that myself by ear. I can tell. But it turns out that I actually did it by the book, and I set the static timing, and then I set the idle, the timing at idle, so they're the right thing. And then I set the timing, after advance, and I have it all perfect. And guess what happens now when I go out there? If I touch the starter, it starts and idles perfectly. And I just want to confess that if it didn't, I probably would have just lived with it like that for years and years and years. But because I was going to sell it, I figured I better go through this thing, I don't know why it is. I don't do that when I want to go ride it. Like I'll know it needs a valve adjustment. I'll know the tires are bald. I'll know all these things are wrong with it, but I'll just ride it anyway because I want to ride. There's something to be said, about all these guys with all this big grown-up discipline that say, listen, before you go out, take care of all the stuff, because when it's perfect, it's lovely.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna pay attention to yours auction, because that's next for this one. I haven't finished it, so I don't feel right. Like you said, put it on there until it actually runs right.
Yeah. This one's fairly non-stock, so it's been customized by me. So we'll see if the public appreciates that or not.
So my RC5 is next. I think I might keep this R100. Well, and because it's a runner rider, whereas the R65 is stock. It's nice looking, it's clean, it's a really sort of time capsule bike, but this R100 is not so much. I think I could sell that pretty easily, Craigslist or Marketplace, less than market, and still come out ahead. You know what I mean? Did I tell you about a Ducati Mountaineer?
I think you bought one, didn't you?
I bought a Ducati Mountaineer.
Yeah, I love the looks of that when you bought it.
It was actually the same trip as the R65 in just in February, first February. And like I've seen them and they're always missing like the toolbox cover or the shroud for the engine, but they're basically a little 90cc two-stroke dirt bike, and they're really small. I mean, the bars are, 12 inches apart, the handlebars. Found it out on Craigslist and jumped on it, stuffed it in the back of the car. The poor dog was, beside herself, literally, and drove up to Portland and put a Beamer on the back. And so I was at capacity for bikes,
I'll
but
tell you what,
that's
you know what? That little Bronco is so cute that I want to have a tea party with it in a little tent in a little girl's room, and put stuffed toys on it, and because it just belongs in a world of soft cuddly things because it's just that lovely. That
yeah, well, the Mountaineer, right? Because there is a
Yeah, yeah.
Bronco.
No, the Mountaineer is the one that I wish was my granddaughter.
Well,
Not that I
yeah,
don't. Now, if my granddaughter listens to this, she's going to feel like she's going to be replaced by a motorcycle, which I want to say clearly you will be at one point.
yeah. Let's just get that
But but don't get your feelings hurt.
right on. Well, what's next? What do you got? The R65, so that's done. Now it's just like get it all posted, wait a week, and then it sells. What's next? Queued up for you.
I've become interested. I have a pile of other BMW projects back here, so I can always restore and sell a BMW anytime I put my mind to it. Um, because I've been collecting parts and bikes forever. So I've got a fairly good inventory. But are you familiar with the HPN BMWs?
No, not at all.
Okay. If you Google them real quick, you're going to find that they were a specialty builder of boxers, um, and they set them up for Paris, Dakar,
Okay.
and they were, um, you know, pretty pretty competitive rally bike kind of styles. And then they did them for the public. So they were kind of for privateer racers. They did them for factory BMW for a while. And so, can you see some of those pictures? You see something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, yeah. They're the Perry Dakar
Yeah,
box.
yeah. So I think I'm going to do one of those. I'm going to take my rattiest one and make it into that. And I think I'll keep. That'll be something I'll keep for a while. But I have a really well used but runs perfectly R100 that is the frame is got surface rust on it. It's got 87,000 miles on it, but it runs perfectly.
Yeah.
But so it's really hard to interest the public in buying, because I'm not going to take that frame all apart and, I'm going to paint it, but I'm just going to, clean it up. I'm not going to take the motor out and powder coat the frame on a bike that has 87,000
Yeah.
87,000 miles without rebuilding the motor. So which I think is it runs perfect. So I'm just going to use it as sort of a desert cruiser crasher sled, but I'm going to set it up like the HPN rally bikes, and I think that will be very fun. I think it's a really good look. Um, and I used to have an older boxer style GES 94 last year, the R100 GS. I used to have one of those, and I actually liked it off road. It had a very low center of gravity, and you had to be tender with it, and you kind of it wasn't a hard charger, but you could go exploring just about anywhere with it.
Hmm.
Within reason, and especially at my age and my skill ability, that bike's certainly enough for me. So I'm going to make it my Arizona desert back road cruiser, and so I'm getting excited about that. Anything you put knobby tires on excites me.
Yeah, yeah, and it certainly looks the part. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
I sent you a link a couple days ago. There's a stash of BMW parts here.
yeah.
Um,
I saw that. Yeah,
Guy wants, I don't know, 5K or something for, I don't know, probably 8 bikes worth of parts. Um,
I saw that, and I was trying to determine if there really were bikes worth of parts, or because I have quite a stock of BMW stuff here too. And what happens is that you look at the lot of it, you go, man, that's a great, nice big pile. But the truth is, 80% of it nobody buys. And so it's like to have it really be valuable. You can, like I have all these, new old stock parts that somebody had bought for like 4 restorations. They got all tooled up for it, and then they lost interest in it or had something happen. So I bought all the leftovers, and I kept thinking, well, that's a very nice pile of leftovers. All of it's new, but yeah, I put everything up for sale, and there's only a few bits that people want.
Yeah.
And so it's just very rare that you'll find home for a lot of those parts. And so to me, if it was 8 rolling bikes, motors, frames, wheels, then I'd be probably interested, and either try to get it or have me and you get it and split it. But just parts, it's like, well, when I'm not doing that many restorations in a year to buy all those parts, and I'm almost sure that 80% of them will just live on the shelf forever. Because I mean, how many final drives are you going to sell on Craigslist? Or on,
well, I was thinking about assembling as many bikes as I could, and then passing on another parts lot to somebody else. But I just did that with the Marinis. I realize I've got 2 giant boxes of parts left over from my 350 and 500, and what am I gonna do with them? I'm not gonna. I mean, there's like hundreds of pieces. It's like, I don't want to eBay a base gasket. You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
But there's a couple looks like GS tanks in that lot. That's what made me think about it.
If there were frames and titles, and motors and boxes, and we looked at it and thought, okay, I can mix and match and make 8 rolling bikes out of that pile.
Yeah.
I would have been more interested, but I didn't see frames and titles. I just saw motor parts, and I'm not rebuilding that many motors that I could justify having that many parts around. Yeah. I'm interested in the gearboxes. Would like to got those separately, but anyway, nonetheless, it wasn't quite the right deal for me. So I kind of let it sit, but it's always, which brings up a thing that people should be aware of, is that when you're selling parts and when you're buying parts, not everything in that pile is saleable or desirable. Now, if you're doing a complete restoration, you might use all that little stuff, but like a brake actuator rod, for, that goes from, let's see, how many people are buying those?
Yeah.
They're just not, and you can have and there's always somebody who wants it, but there's only 1 or 2. And how long are you going to leave that listed on eBay or wherever while it just sits there and nothing happens to it? So, my experience, I did that with a load of cars one time. I bought a whole barn full of Jaguars, and I looked up all the values of all the parts. I thought, oh my God, these parts are going to pay, I'm going to make more money on the parts than the cars are free, and I put those parts up for sale, and there was wicked activity for the first 3 weeks. And then, and I made a good chunk of money, but 80% of those parts, when I moved, I could not find a home for them, and I had to take them down and recycle them, of all things. But because those kind of things, there just aren't that many guys restoring them.
Or at the right time, right? Like,
yeah. So
I've got stuff on a wish list for bikes I'm not going to touch. I mean, maybe ever, but I just know that at some point I'm going to need that thing, and this guy's got it. I save it, and then I know that, and then immediately you get offers, right? Like, so and so wants 10% off or whatever, and it's like, next year maybe. But yeah, I realize there's a bunch of crap within it, but if you do end up pulling together 2 bikes and then you sell them for, $2,500 each, there's your money, right?
Yeah, but then again, it's just the time. What's the payback for that in time? Where something like that makes sense is where if you can take a whole nice bunch of stuff in boxes to a swap meet and then sell some of it and then trade the rest of it, that seems to be the better scenario. But just acquiring and inventorying parts, I have found, within reason, it just it's not my gig. Because I think if you were going to start being in parts, you just got to have a ton of parts so that you can sell very few of them every month. But I'm not willing to tie up that much space or time.
Well, speaking of swap meets, we've briefly discussed Mid-Ohio. Is that still something you're interested in this year?
Yeah, I think we better do it. I don't have any specific plans, not to do it. And so let's just say that we are doing it, and let's say it before everybody else occupies our time. And so pretty soon we're going to wake up one of these days going, oh yeah, I've committed to that.
Yeah.
So even though you don't have to commit to it right now, let's just say we are doing it and practice that for the next week or two, and then put a box by the door and then start putting stuff in the box that you're going to trade or sell. And then pretty soon you're going to have it all ironed out that, oh yeah, I'm going to that. I'm taking this bike with me, or these bikes I'm going to sell. And
well, I got one on you. I have a box by the door. I've reserved a trailer. I put a calendar flag in the ground, and I think we're gonna drive to Texas with a trailer and bring, because I have stuff there and stuff here, and so it's hard to justify bringing stuff across the country. So I have to sort of go through everything and see what I need. This is not interesting at all, but I figure out what I have to take to Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Because then that's where it's going to end up if I don't sell it. So I kind of want to show up to Mid Ohio with as much stuff and good stuff as possible. So I've got everything sort of queued up anyway. No deposits, but I'm like you said, acting as if.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and buy the camping space, or not the camping space, but the swap meet space. Let's just buy that, and let's go halvies on that and do it. And that way we're committed to it, and that's enough to keep us making sure that we go.
Yeah.
And then I'll figure out what to bring or what to get rid of, or or if I'm in buying position by then, or if I'm in selling position. We'll see.
Yeah. So that's that. Okay. What else is on the radar? Is there anything?
Andy, there is one thing floating out there in the universe that I would like to address. And, last week I got this great notice from Hole in the Head, Motor Stories and Podcasts. And lo and behold, there was a release of artistic inspirational material. And I clicked on it. And Andy, what did I hear?
You heard a very spontaneous decision live come forth. Yeah.
Let me just tell you, America, Andy has become a poet.
Yeah.
And he released, like in a moto Hole in the Head moto jam type, he just launched into his feelings and his discovered his own observations about his recent process of buying and using motorcycles, and just became eloquent. And you gave the world 2 lengthy but interesting poems.
Yeah.
Which I was not prepared for.
What happened was I had, as I was going to pick up, for anybody who was spared it, basically I took this R100 to the park, right? And as I was coming back, I just had this thing going over and over my head. It was just a rhymey thing, because that's what happens with me sometimes. And so then I was like, hey, I'm going to make a little limerick. I mean, maybe that was even more than I thought. I just started writing down, and then just recorded it, hit go, and without a lot of thought. And it occurred to me that that's towing the line of something that I fucking hate. Is like the romanticism and the personification of
the spiritual nature of riding motorcycles and being moved by it, and
spirituality. Yeah,
it welled up in you to the point that it came forth in rhyming verse, and you shared it with the world. And I want to say I'm glad you did, and I cannot wait for what's coming up, because one, I'm currently writing a song, and it's called My Friend Andy Is Now a Poet. Now, I'm not done with it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and sing it on the show when it's fully composed. So what I want is just invite all of our Hole in the Head followers. We're going to go ahead and go artistic on you. We're going to go ahead and explore and express ourselves, in these very deeply intellectual and spiritual ways. And let's see what else other people can contribute. Because I think what you started and unleashed is a movement that no one will care about, but nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and throw some art at it, and I can't imagine that being a bad thing. But watch for my song. It's coming soon.
I this makes me want to play with Chat GPT and AI and say, hey, make some motorcycle poetry, and then see what it collects from the world and creates. And it's this is sappiness of whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe we should just go into that. Maybe we should let's just take a chapter and say, listen, this whole point is shaming people who have deep feelings about motorcycles and talk about them.
Well,
and so let's make fun of them, but let's do it from the guise of, I mean, you're the perfect spokesperson for this because you're hip and you're young and you're intellectual and you're bright and you're kind of wealthy, off guard, kind of a look to you. I mean, you're a hipster, I mean, in the best sense of the word. And so you should be having some poetry fall out of your mouth. So this is, I cannot wait for this to keep going.
Everything that you just said. Like everything that you just said, I hate.
I know you're way more sincere than all of that. But on the surface, Andy, if people didn't know you and just took the snapshot of your life or looked at your Facebook profile, it's like, oh, I live in the Northwest, kind of well-to-do, kind of collect my Italian motorcycles. I'm very particular about my walnut cookies, and you're a bit of a foodie, and you collect watches, and so there is a bit of that is. You realize that, I mean, I'm not stretching the truth in any of this, am I?
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Okay, all right. There's nothing wrong with it. It's part. It's part of it's part of how you're participating in the world. So it's okay. I think it looks good on you.
Did I tell you about the time that I realized there was a moment of self-awareness that comes to us sometimes that you're not prepared for, and all those things that you said I understand, but I may or may not relate to at any given point. But there was one time where when we were in San Francisco, I didn't know that, and I don't know what if I'm treading ground here. I didn't know that there was a thing of Caucasian men and Asian women couples. Like I didn't realize that was just like a phenomenon. And my wife and I at the time that we were dating, we were in wherever we were having a frozen yogurt, as you do.
And you're the Caucasian one, is that right?
I'm the Caucasian.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I glossed over that. So we're sitting there eating froyo, and I'm sitting there, I look over and there's another couple. There's a lot of couples, right? And there's a couple over here, and it's just some dude, some white guy, and he's got a Asian girlfriend. And I was like, oh, at that point, it was just, those are facts. It didn't occur to me that we were mirroring each other. And then I looked over here on my right, Caucasian guy, Asian girlfriend. And I was like, wait a minute. And I'm looking around and there's like 5 or 6 of us. And it occurred to me that we're in San Francisco, and like, that's a thing. That's a category of couples. I
want to know all about this. And so does it have a name?
We didn't. There's some, there are different names for that kind of phenomenon that are.
Let's hear some of them. Let's just educate me.
Now you can Google them. You can Urban Dictionary them. That's not up to me to teach anybody that. And so we were like, well, there's none for Asian Caucasian couples. So now we have, and I'm oversharing here. If we spot that in the world, my wife and I, we call them rice cracker couples. Because I don't know, maybe you get it, maybe you don't, but
I love it.
So we should look at. So that's our code now. Is like, yeah, who's so and so again? That's that rice cracker over and wherever. Like, oh, that okay, yeah, we can. Oh God, we suck. But anyway,
here's what I want to know, because you in so many ways you're my link to modern culture. But what I want to know now is that I want to know, deep inside the Asian families, how do they describe these Caucasian boyfriends that show up? And I want to know what the terms are, and I want to know what they say and what they feel like. What do they make fun of these guys for? Right? I want to know that. I think that would be really interesting.
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I'm not even going to try it, but I know it happens. I know it's
no. Listen. You go out with your lovely wife, get her liquored up, and to have her tell you what her family says about you when you're not around. That's what I want to know.
No, I can tell this. I I could read the sentiment in our years. I could read the sentiment from our parents. I mean, I think I've won them over. We get along really well. Maybe or maybe I may have proved them right or wrong, TBD. But we get along really well. But they're I can tell, and it's an interesting, like, of course, like Asian dads or judge or whatever, maybe not, but I know
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
thing. I am very curious. I wish I understood, certain
Okay, we need to
languages.
have somebody out there in listenerland who knows of this phenomenon. Give us the inside story because I want to know what is said in the native language about Caucasian boyfriends that present themselves to Asian families. I want to know because I think it'll be a fantastic, lovely description. I can't wait to hear it.
And probably more accurate than anything.
Oh yeah, I mean painfully, I mean devastatingly accurate. Get ready.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, so we're poets now. We released that, and I have both an affinity for and a complete disdain of that sort of romanticism of, speed, and like the t-shirts that are just go, bro. Like, just
Yeah,
there's that whole sort of side of it that I understand, and I mean, there is a thrill. There is an almost spiritual, you know, set of lessons to be learned by working on motorcycles and cars, and like, I bought in, but maybe it's the, you know, self-consciousness or something, but expressing that in a way that a lot of people do just seems super cringy in the way that it gets expressed.
I think you're right because the thing is that that's been there from the beginning of time. It's just that it wasn't until it started with Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance that we began to associate some of this deep thinking with having an activity that sort of really what it does is it puts your mind in neutral in a way, so that all these other things can then now well up and you can find space for those thoughts. And then riding along for hours and hours and hours with just the sound of the motor in your helmet um, gets to the point where, I mean, some people initially find that boring, but then pretty soon it gives way to a particular way of working through thoughts and feelings that becomes, I mean, all of a sudden you can go out and you can get 8 hours out of the way, without even flexing, because it's like acquiring a meditation practice. So
Mhm.
we know that, but yeah, it gets cringy when we try to over spiritualize it, or it's really just that when we surround it with too much art, not poetry, however, that's right on point. But I'm saying, but all of a sudden if we make a really tasteful, thoughtful video about going out in the early morning light, and going through the process, and then showing everybody how deeply moving you are, as you ride your motorcycle. Here's what you're doing: you're riding your motorcycle out to get a muffin. Okay. It should be deeply moving to you, but you don't need to show that or portray that to us, or ask us to endorse you as a thought leader simply because you do that. You and I are only one of hundreds of millions of people who love these kind of activities, and there's nothing special about us, except for when you write a poem about it, which you've done. So you probably are a little bit more special than most, more special than me, until my song comes out. Get ready
Can't
for
wait.
it.
I want to hear the song.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
get ready.
I will say this, that when I'm not able to work on stuff, like when I lost my shop and the garage wasn't available, um, I do feel a lack. I have a hard time not working on stuff, because there's a degree of success and
Hmm.
accomplishment in doing these small things that I might not get in my day to day. Certainly when I was not having a lot of success in work or in, relationship or whatever it was, I knew that I could just go into the shop or the garage, and if nothing else, I can get some WD-40 on a rag and just touch the fenders, and they will be better than they were. You know what I mean? Like, just I could just do
Oh yeah,
something.
yeah. I mean, there's so many things that we spend a lot of time with, at work or in relationships or whatever, that yield absolutely nothing, and we're embarrassed to say that, but the truth is there's a lot of that, And at least at work, you get some money back in your pocket. But it's a pretty soulless experience for some people, and depending on what that offers you. That's why the contrast of, like you said, wiping the dust off a fender or changing a cable, and all of a sudden you can pull your clutch in again. It sometimes is rare because that's the only activity where it's been actually satisfying and effective, and your time amounted to something. And we have to just face the reality of it. That a lot of what we do in life sucks up a lot of time and has absolutely no effect. Discernible effect anyway. And other than the fact that it nets us some money, and that's not to be discounted. That seems to be necessary. So I get that, but there is something wickedly pleasing about it. And absolutely necessary, and it just makes a person grounded. And I guess for me, it makes sense out of having to put up with so much bullshit. It doesn't lessen the amount of bullshit you get. In my case, there's still the same amount, but it just makes sense out of it. You realize, okay, there's a big old shit sandwich I'm getting served, and it's like, I'm going to have to eat this whole thing, but at least I don't have to eat it when I go out to the shop. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a part of it that saves us. It saves our soul in some respect. So I think it is important. And I guess that's why, I'm teasing you about taking the time to write about it, but I think it's important, to seize those moments, to have those feelings and thoughts, and to express those things, because in the end, that's the way forward for a lot of us. I'm not going to find my way forward anymore ever again in corporate America, so, which is somewhat of a relief. But on the other hand, it's like, I can have a very pleasing effect for a day's work in the shop. And there's a reason why so many of us are, want to do that or want to return to that. So anyway, it belongs out there. It's necessary.
Yeah. Well, that was the foundation for those. Arguably both of those. Stupid story. There's no reason. Like, put yourself in a position where you have to get a motorcycle from San Francisco to Seattle. Well, dipshit. Like, why do you have so much stuff? Like, that's the answer. You got to go to the park to save your kid. Just take a car, idiot. Like, what? Like, but the fact was, like, I put my hands on these things, and now they are able to accomplish something that they couldn't do before. And I think that was the beauty of that. But anyway, yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of ways where it's gotten me through a thing. Big or small.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just wind it up with this, Andy, if we can. Hey, if you have some thoughts and feelings you're trying to get to, work on your bike, you're going to find your way to it. If you are left with strange sequence of words that rhyme, put them down and produce yourself a podcast and share your poetry, and get ready for the song that I'm going to write all about you.
I can't wait.
There you go. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Well, I got to work on it right now. I got to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go look at this Jeep FC forward controls.
Are you flying down there?
I'm gonna. God damn it. Maybe not. Maybe. I got this trip coming up, so I need to be smart. But he hadn't sold it. I've got shippers queued up. By the way, have you ever requested a shipping quote to ship a car, and they just bomb you, carpet bomb you?
Anyway. Hey Andy, I just want to relieve the pain of you trying to decide about this Jeep. All right. So what you're looking at is a Jeep forward control, which is really cool. Looks like a van pickup that's made by Jeep. I think they're awesome. You found one out in the desert. Guys are asking a pretty good price for it. You're deciding whether or not you should go. You're on the fence. Is it worth going out there? I was supposed to look at it. I got distracted. I couldn't do it. But anyway, so you're stuck with what to do with this whole thing. And I just want to leave this one thing I saw today in regarding to the Jeep forward control. Guys got one for sale. Doesn't look clean, but it is a runner. It's asking $9,500 for it. Okay. I'm just going to leave that with you, Andy, because I know that one in the desert, I know how much that one costs. I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to be in a good position. And the reason I brought that up really was just to keep you, like, you need to see the look on your face right now because the wheels are turning. And I only did that to afflict you. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I got the rest of the parts coming for the BMW tomorrow. I get it together.
Yeah, you like heroin? Here's some. Here's
Yeah.
here's what it looks. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it feels like.
Just a taste.
Yeah.
First one's free.
Yeah.
Second one,
Jeep.
you have to get a shipper.
Jeep forward control in the desert. One short flight away.
You know what sucks is that the ad has expired, but I have his number. You know what I mean? Like I coordinated with him on text, so I have his number. And Craigslist doesn't tell you when your ad expires. So that means he thinks his
You don't want to tell him.
I don't want to tell him. He thinks his ad's still fishing for him. It's not.
Yep. And he does not need to know the ad that I saw in Marketplace for one for $9,500. That's about the same condition. So, Andy, sleep well.
All right. Well, we'll see.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye.
This podcast is produced and edited by Hole in the Head Moto. Follow along on the socials at Hole in the Head Moto. Or you can send an email to actually@holeintheheadpod.com. You can also support the show via Patreon. Look for the link in the show notes. We'll see you next time.